Good morning. So today we're going to go back into chapter 12 in the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. And we're going to be talking about this section called Bringing in the Healer, Climbing the Mountain. And this is a really great section. And she's going to break down a lot of things with regard to rage, what's behind rage, illusions in reality, what that means, what our true challenge is, and how that's going to impact our life if we take that challenge on versus if we don't. So it's just really great, and I hope that you'll hang with me as we examine this part of the story, the Crescent Moon Bear. So, and I hope you're doing good today. All right, I'm going to open up this section by reading a little bit to you. So, bringing in the healer, climbing the mountain. So rather than trying to behave and not feel, she says behave, and not feel our rage, in other words, like stuff it down, right? Ignore it. Or rather than using it to burn down every living thing in a 100-mile radius, it is better to first ask rage to take a seat with us, have some tea, talk a while so we can find out what summoned this visitor. At first, rage acts like the angry husband in the story. It doesn't want to talk. It doesn't want to eat. It just wants to sit there, rail, or be left alone. It is at this critical moment that we call the healer our wisest self, our best resources for seeing beyond ego irritation and aggravation. The healer is always the far seer. She is the one who can tell us what good can come from exploring this emotive surge. Healers in fairy tales generally represent a calm and unperturbed aspect of the psyche. Even though the world may be falling to pieces outwardly, the inner healer is unswayed by it all and maintains the calm to figure out the best way to proceed. Every woman's psyche contains this fixer, yes. It is part of the wild and natural psyche, and we are born with it. If we have lost it, we can call it again by looking calmly at the situation causing us rage, projecting ourselves into the future, and from that vantage point, deciding what would make us feel proud of our past behavior and then acting that way. I thought that last sentence was such great advice just on its own. You know what I mean? Like if you were mentoring a young person and they were struggling with a situation, like a decision rather, they're struggling with a decision, you could give them that piece of advice, and I feel like that's super powerful. So I'm going to read it again. It says, she's calling it the fixer, but I feel like it's like your higher self, you know, like your intuition, that internal compass that's telling you, you know, here's what you need to do. It says, look calmly at the situation causing us rage, or I would say just looking at a situation that you have to make a decision on too. Projecting ourselves into the future, and from that vantage point, deciding what would make us feel proud of our past behavior and then acting that way. So I thought that was cool, like a little visualization technique. And you know, I made some notes on this from earlier when I was reading, and I think a lot of times the problem with rage is that there's an internal conflict, and here's what I mean. I feel like some hot rods on the street you can probably hear right now, but I feel like, you know, this internal conflict happens when and there was a friend of mine that I had initially met her because I hired her to be like a life coach, and she just gave me some great advice. We wound up being friends and everything. So she something she said that was so simple and yet so profound for me was, she said, what is it that you don't want to admit to yourself? And in the moment I was thinking, what do you mean? Like, that's strange. It's a strange question to ask. I mean, I don't not admit anything to myself. And it took a long time, you know, to realize what she meant. And I think that that's the problem when, you know, we have rage or any kind of, you know, uncomfortable feeling inside of ourselves, I think that there's an internal conflict with what you know to be true, but you don't want to admit it because you don't want it to be true. So just like, red flags in a toxic person, job, environment, situation. In other words, it's like Eckhart Tolle talks about this. I watched him years ago. It's kind of like, let's see if I can remember this right. He says there's 3 options. Accept the situation, change the situation, or leave the situation, I think. And it's insanity. He says it's insanity to stay in a situation like knowing it's wrong and doing nothing about it. It's like that's what creates that internal conflict. It's like if we know this toxic person or environment or whatever is bad for us, but we don't leave it and we don't change it, or maybe we can't, and we don't leave and we just continue to subject ourselves to that, he's saying that's insanity. And that's what we're dealing with. We're not labeling it that. We're just feeling the feelings from that. What we're doing is we're not living aligned with our truth. And so we're like betraying ourselves, you know what I mean? Our truths, because we know it's not right. We just don't want it to not be right. But it is what it is. And we have to see things. We have to be strong enough to see things for what they are. And it's when we're not willing to see things for what they are that causes us the trouble. And that's why it goes back to like that old video I made, faith versus fear. I feel like it comes down to a lack of faith, because what's the problem? Do we not have faith that even though there's an unknown alternative life or future for us, do we not have faith that it's gonna be better? So it's like you have to step out not knowing, having that concrete certainty, but what you do know is that you can't stay here. So that's just a little something for you to think about. I hope it validates you and your experiences, and I'm sure that for a lot of us, once we've been bold enough to follow our gut, then our gut has proven time and again to be right. And so I just hope that, it's kind of like as you live and you get that wisdom and those experiences, then it gets a little bit easier every time, to follow your gut, I feel like, to stay aligned with it. So just some thoughts. It's like, do you really want to hear what that inner healer has to say? Do you really want to face, the truth? And so, then she goes into talking about, experiences we may have in childhood and how, depending on what it was that we dealt with that was, traumatic for us, difficult, she says, then we become sensitized to further injury and we use all of our defenses to avoid, situations like that. So I get that. And so, this was interesting. She says, and you can expand this, beyond like it being a woman or these particular situations, to still get the gist of what she's saying here, I think. She says, additionally, if a woman was raised to have fewer positive expectations than others in the family, with harsh restraints on her freedoms, deportment, language, and so forth, her normal anger is likely to escalate over issues. So I would say if you grew up in an environment where you didn't feel free enough to express yourself, to state your truths without being made fun of, without, being exploited, without getting yelled at or raged at, there's all kind of situations that would create a child who feels like they have to suppress their true feelings and thoughts. And so her point here is that what happens is your anger, or the person's anger, is likely to escalate over issues or tones of voice or gestures or words or other sensory triggers that remind her of the original events. So whatever it was that traumatized a person, you're going to be sensitive if you're reminded of that in the future. That's just kind of common sense, but it feels good to hear it. It's validating to hear it, and it brings clarity too. to your own experiences, and also maybe people that you're close to, and trying to understand why they are the way they are, or why they react the way they react. Hopefully this is just giving you some perspective. It says we can come close to reconstructing the wounds of childhood by closely inspecting what adults lose their tempers over. It says we want to use anger as a creative force. We want to use it to change, develop, and protect. So whether a woman is dealing with the aggravation of the moment with an offspring, or some sort of a searing, lengthy burn, the perspective of the healer is the same. When there is calm, there can be learning. There can be creative solutions. But where there is firestorm, inside or out, or chaos, I would say, it burns hot and leaves nothing but ash. We want to be able to look back on our action with honor. We want we want something to show for feeling angry. Yeah, but you're never going to create a good outcome in the moment, in a situation in your life, from a place of chaos or anger. You've got to get to that calm, that clarity, to do that in a positive manner. So she talks about venting. It's good to vent, but it needs to be done in containment, just kind of common sense. And then she goes into talking about the symbolism of the mountain and the different levels of the mountain. And she relates that to Buddhism. And it was pretty interesting. I just encourage you to read that if you have the book. And so then she says, so it is good to take to the mountain when we don't know what else to do. When we are drawn to quests we know little about, this makes life and develops soul. In climbing the foreign mountain, we gain true knowledge of the instinctive psyche and the creative acts of which it is capable. That is our goal. Learning occurs differently for different people, but the instinctual viewpoint that emanates from the wild unconscious, and that is cyclical, begins to be the only one that makes sense of and gives meaning to life, our lives. It is the thing that unerringly informs us about what to do next. Where can we find this process that will free us? On the mountain. On the mountain, we find additional clues about how to transform the hurt, negativism, and grudge-holding attributes of rage, all of which are usually warranted initially. One is the phrase "arigato zasho," which the woman sings to thank the trees and the mountains for allowing her to pass. Now this is interesting. Literally translated, the phrase means thank you, illusion. In Japanese, zasho means a clear way of looking at things that interfere with deep understandings of ourselves and the world. I'm going to read that again. A clear way of looking at the things that interfere with deeper understandings of ourselves and the world. So it's like if there's something interfering with us understanding ourselves and the world on a deeper, more meaningful level, truth, then that's a blockage. That's what she's going to get into. That's an illusion. So my notes say we first have to identify the illusions, to remove them, to see what's truly there. It's like truth is always there. The truth is there. The problem is just us seeing it. And so that's kind of like, sometimes it's like you might consider to truly know what love is, you have to first know or experience what love isn't. So it's kind of like that backwards way. We think we could just go right to the truth, or right to what's right and real, but in reality, we have to first acknowledge that there's a whole bunch of stuff in the way. And if we don't know that there's anything in the way, then we're gonna be so distracted, we're gonna take falsehoods as truth sometimes because we're naive, we don't know any better, which is the whole reason why a narcissist can get away with what they do, fooling us with constant deceit and dangling carrots and all the tricks that they pull, faking us off like they're being truthful and forthcoming when they're not. So the first level, I feel like, is to acknowledge that there are falsehoods, there are illusions, And that's the biggest pill to swallow. And then once you acknowledge that, then you have to learn how to see them and identify them. And so then she's saying, you know, a clear way of looking at things that interfere with deeper understanding. So once we see these things, then we can avoid them. We can go around them, you know, on the path up the mountain. We can, oh, she's going to get into that. I'll go ahead and read a little bit more. So, it says, an illusion occurs when something creates an image that is not real, such as heat waves on a road that make the road seem wavy. That there are heat waves is accurate, but the road is not really wavy. That is the illusion. The first piece of information is accurate, but the second piece, the conclusion, is not. In the story, the mountain allows the woman passage, and the trees lift their limbs to let her pass. This symbolizes a lifting of illusions that allows the woman to proceed on her quest. In Buddhism, there are said to be 7 veils of illusion. As each is discarded, a person is said to understand another aspect of the true nature of life and the self. To lift the veils makes one strong enough to tolerate what life is about. Now, this is really interesting and resonates for me. And to see, remember, to lift the veil. To lift the veil makes one strong enough to tolerate what life is about. And to see into the patterns of events, people, and things, and eventually to learn not to take the first impression so deadly seriously, but to look behind and behind, she says. So no assumptions, no quick judgments, you know, getting to that place of maturity where you understand you don't know it all. And, you know, even more so than that, there's a lot you don't know. And, you know, learning to take the time before you react quickly, because you're living from that unconscious or subconscious belief that, you know, you've got things figured out. When you kind of let that go, you surrender that. And you understand there truly is a higher wisdom here, beyond you. Then, you know, you're going to take your time truly absorbing everything in front of you, the meaning behind things, and that's going to cause you to take your time responding to. That's maturity. That's wisdom. You know, that's an aspect of it for sure. And so, and I'm guilty of that, making assumptions, you know, quickly. And I think that, you know, our past and the experiences we've been through can play a part in how we make an assumption. If we make a negative assumption really quick, or if we make a positive assumption really quick, you know, it's just that conditioning because of what we've been through. So it says, when we look for our truth, we are also looking to dispel our illusions. Yeah. It says, when we are able to see through these illusions, which in Buddhism would be called barriers to enlightenment, we are also able to discover the hidden side of rage. And then my notes says, maybe rage is frustration over the illusions. You know, like I was talking about earlier, on some level, you know, we see the truth, but we just gaslight ourselves. You know, it's like, I see it, but I don't want to believe it, and I'm not really sure. You know, it's that whole internal conflict. It says these are some common illusions about rage. If I lose my rage, I will be changed. I will become weaker. The first premise is correct, but the conclusion is inaccurate. That's just an example. She says these illusions are challenged by questing, by asking, studying, peering under the trees, and by climbing on the body of the mountain. We lose our illusions when we take the risk to meet the aspect of our nature that is truly wild, a mentor of life. Rage, patience, suspicion, wariness, secretiveness, remoteness, and resourcefulness. And she says, ... the crescent moon bear. So that internal part of us that knows, the wise one, you know, wild woman, Baba Yaga, La Loba. She has so many different names, you know, just the one who knows inside of us. And so some journaling prompt for you would be, what are the consequences of never climbing the mountain? You know, because a lot of people never do. Just something to think about. And that's just it. It's like, you know, it reminds me of, in the Bible it says, you know, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened. And I feel like, you know, a lot of times it comes down to, there's those of us who would run down the stairs and bust the door open if we could, you know what I mean? Like we want to know, we love and appreciate truth, and we want to get to the bottom of things, and you know, live our best life for ourselves and others. You know, there's those of us who pursue the truth in that manner. And so of course we're gonna you know, knock at the door and strive for it to be opened, for, you know, understanding. And then there's those who never knock at the door. They know it's there, but they don't want to face the truth because they're comfortable living a lie. And I don't know, I think a lot of times, you know, sometimes people also just don't, out of ignorance, they just are comfortably numb and don't know what they don't know, you know, and I think that they suffer because of that, because I think the more the Bible says wisdom is the principal thing. I mean, we're encouraged to strive for that, for wisdom. And then furthermore, it says, you know, in all your getting of wisdom, get understanding. So the understanding piece is another part of it. And so I think that those of us who are striving for that, you know, we can help to wake those up who may not even realize they're living in an illusion. You know what I mean? They may not even see all the deceit in the world. So if we can help to wake them up, then we can get them free as well. And that's how I see it. And then, like I said, there's other people that, you know, they're not even going to get up and walk to the door. They're just, they see it, but they're never going to go and knock. They're never going to seek and find. But that's how I see, you know, all of this. It's like truth is freedom. And the illusion is a lie and a trap. And, you know, Christ said that he came to set us free. And this is just remember, please be encouraged to use your own lens. I'm never going to push my beliefs on anybody, but this is just my perspective. And you can certainly take this and, you know, maybe it'll just give you something to think about through your lens, okay? But this is, you know, through my lens. You know, Christ said, you know, it's in the Bible, he came to set us free. And so there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. But one way that's, you know, I feel like in alignment with what we're talking about is you have to know there's something to be set free of, first of all. You have to understand there's deceit in this world. And there's untruths. There's truth and untruths, okay? So the first thing is to admit if, you know, you're not free, which means you're caught up in lies. Either you're participating in it like a narcissist, which is a choice, or you're caught up in it out of ignorance. And so that's where that striving of wisdom comes, because faith without action, faith without works is dead. So there's striving that has to take place. But the whole concept of Christ is self-denial, which means denying the fact that you know it all. Does that make sense? Like laying that down, an ego death. Admitting that, you know, you don't know it all, and that there is a higher wisdom outside of you that you have access to, that you can co-create with and align yourself with. And that's beautiful. Again, I feel like we're created with the purpose of living in that way, you know, aligned with that higher wisdom. There's so much in my head, and there's so many different ways I can take this. I'm trying to stay focused on what, you know, specifically I want to say to keep this not too long. But I hope that this is getting the wheels turning for you, and I just hope that you don't give up climbing the mountain, because it's like, you know, is it worth it to you? Is it worth it to you to knock at that door? Do you really want the door to open? Are you strong enough to face the truths the hard truths? Do you have faith that, you know, even though something may be unknown to you, that, you know, it's going to be okay? And, you know, it may even be more than okay. It may be abundantly beautiful beyond what you can even wrap your mind around, because maybe you've never experienced the best part of your life yet. You know, we don't know. We don't know. And so these are just some things to think about, like I said. And the next section is called the Spirit Bear. This is a really great chapter, and I just hope that this is going to be transformative for all of us in a beautiful way. And I just hope that you'll continue to join me as we go through the book. And I thank you for coming along today, and I just hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.